This week we are back in St. Augustine, Florida, visiting the Ponce de Leon Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park. And before I even got here today, I had numerous people tell me not to visit. I had total strangers coming up to me telling me that this was a sham, a tourist trap, phony, and definitely not worth the money. But I didn't listen to them because I want to discover things like this for myself. This attraction has been open to the public for over 100 years, and I really wanted to check it out. And I'm glad I did because this site was incredibly interesting, and I feel like I discovered a hidden trove of history. This site has been billed as the 1513 landing site of Juan Ponce de Leon, the site of his fabled Fountain of Youth, the site of the first St. Augustine settlement, as well as the site of the Native American village of Seloy. And it's also the location of the first Catholic mission in the United States, and that was in 1587. This site also claims that in 1909 a Coronado cross, urn, and documents were unearthed, proving that Ponce de Leon landed here and drank from the spring. Wow, if all of that's true, then this is one of the most amazing historical sites in America. In 1868, this land was owned by a man named H. Williams, and he planted an orchard and called it Paradise Groves and Rose Gardens. Around 1875, he built a well, and there is ample corroboration on the date that that well was built. And it does appear that Williams began the rumor that this was the Fountain of Youth and began charging people to drink out of the fountain. In 1904, Williams sold the property to the outrageous Luella Day McConnell. Per Roadside America, she was a medical doctor in Chicago, but by her own account, she dumped all that in 1898 to go north to the gold fields of the Yukon and made a fortune. When she arrived in St. Augustine in August of 1904, she had already left 2 husbands and claimed to have survived several assassination attempts. Newspapers reported that she had a diamond in one of her front teeth and gave her the name Diamond Lil. Now, this lady was a natural showman. She started to heavily market her property as the Fountain of Youth and the landing site of Ponce de Leon. Miraculously, in 1909, she dug up a Coronado cross right next to the well. She said a tree had fallen down and exposed this large cross in the ground. And this cross was 15 stones high and 13 stones across, and she said that this indicated the date of 1513. She also claims to have found buried next to the cross a silver urn that contained a parchment with the message that Ponce de Leon was there and drank from the well. Both the urn and the parchment have long since disappeared, but the cross is still here on display. In 1927, Luella drove her car into a ditch and died. The property was purchased by Walter B. Frazier, who was instrumental in developing St. Augustine's tourism trade and historical preservation. He was on the St. Augustine City Commission, and he served in the Florida State Senate. And he continued the tradition of this being the landing site of Ponce de Leon and the fabled Fountain of Youth. As a matter of fact, his family still run this park. Isn't that cool? In 1931, Frazier wrote the National Park Service requesting a memorial be built on the property, recognizing this as the landing site of Ponce de Leon, and he almost succeeded. The bill passed the Senate, but it failed to pass the House, mainly due to the detailed report presented to the Park Service. That report basically stated there was absolutely no evidence to support the theory that this was the actual Ponce de Leon landing site. Most historians believe that he landed north of St. Augustine and south of Jacksonville. The report stated the Fountain of Youth seems to be a well, not a spring, and to be without authenticated historical importance. One gets the impression that an effort is made to give the tourists their money's worth and to popularize history with such revisions as will best serve the gate receipts. And in doing so, historical accuracy has suffered. He goes on to recommend that a memorial be erected at the fort and not on a piece of land surrounded by private property that is used as a tourist resort. And even though the national government didn't recognize this site as being important, tourists did, and they flocked here. One of the most amazing things in this park are these peacocks. This park has about 30 peafowl all over the place, and their call permeates the air, and it is incredibly beautiful.
What's he doing?
Showing out.
Hi, Mr. Peacock.
I think he found a new dress. It sounds like a monkey. It sounds like it's a crying monkey. I heard a crying monkey.
All right, we're going to head in this building right here, and this is where they house the Fountain of Youth and the Coronado Cross. So let's go check it out. And I have to apologize straight away because I like to come to these sites blind, and I didn't know what I was looking for when it came to this cross, and I completely missed it. My daughter was here with me, and she missed it too, but I was able to get a couple of views for you. You know, I am very leery about that cross just for the sole fact that it was very convenient when and where it was discovered. I'm not saying it was fake, I'm just saying it's suspect. On to the Fountain of Youth, and here it is. Ta-da! I gotta say, I'm a little underwhelmed by this. I guess I was looking for something more spring-like because before I researched this site, I had no idea that this was just a well. I was kind of expecting something else. And here's something that's a little suspect. That water is coming out of a pipe. Well, we all know this isn't real, and we know that the Fountain of Youth isn't real, and we now know that this was just a well that was built in the 1870s and marketed as the Fountain of Youth. And it's kind of fun, but I really do wish that they had jazzed it up a little bit more, made it look like a fountain or a spring. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Now that is what I was expecting for the Fountain of Youth.
Pretend like this is what.
Yeah, okay. Woo! Wow, that's amazing.
But wouldn't you know it, this tourist attraction was actually sitting on the real deal, guys. As early as 1934, Native American skeletons were unearthed, and the Smithsonian carried out excavations. They found over 100 Native American Christian burials, and this led to the discovery of the Timucua village of Seloy. This tribe was throughout southern Georgia and northern Florida, and each clan had their own chief. And this is a recreation of a dugout canoe. This was a very important mode of transportation here because there is water everywhere. Archaeologists have found evidence that this site has been occupied by Native Americans as a permanent settlement since 2400 BC. A village, it might have had 50 to 300 individuals living in it. And those huts in front of us, they were for sleeping and cooking only, and they could house up to 3 generations of a family. All other activities such as tool making, food processing, and socializing, it took place outside in the open, so these spaces, they didn't need to be that big. But this one, it looks rather roomy. There were 3 types of huts in the village: the family hut, the public hut, and the council hut. And that could be up to 60 feet in diameter with room for about 100 people. And these circular huts, they could withstand up to a Category 2 hurricane. And that makes me wonder, how did they get through hurricanes? How did they protect themselves? They were hunter-gatherers, and they would eat fish, clams, and crabs, as well as deer, rabbit, squirrel, alligator, raccoon, and possums. And they would put to good use every bit of the animal. This site also has live demonstrations, and we've already seen the live cannon go off. And they also talked about some other Spanish weapons, and they also have a blacksmith demonstration.
There's a kitty. Ah, hello, beautifuls. Oh, see, there's the female and there's the male. Do you see?
What Luella Day McConnell didn't know when she purchased this site and started to press the Fountain of Youth is that she wasn't too far off. Excavations at this site started up again in the 1970s, and it is believed with a high degree of certainty that this is the actual site that Spanish explorer Pedro Menendez de Alves landed in 1565, and he set up the first settlement in what would become America. And there are now quite a few markers in this park. That marker in front of us, it commemorates the landing of Ponce de Leon in Florida in 1513. The landing, not that he landed here, it just commemorates his landing in Florida. And this was placed here in 1950, so Walter Frazier finally got his monument. And this marker commemorates the site of the first fort built by Pedro Menendez in 1565. And this marker was placed here in 2015, and it commemorates the first muster of militiamen in the continental United States on September 16th, 1565. There have been numerous archaeological excavations here, and they have found a lot of evidence to support the theory that this is the landing site of Pedro Menendez and thus the first settlement in America. Menendez picked the colony's name because he originally spotted Florida on August 28th, the feast day of St. Augustine, and those rectangle chalk outlines are silhouettes of the Spanish buildings. The Spanish lived in the Native American huts, those are the round outlines, until they built their own buildings. The Spanish structures were made out of wood with palm thatched roofs, and Menendez was only on this site for about 9 months before hostilities with the Native Americans forced them to move to Anastasia Island, when that is directly across the bay from the current city of St. Augustine. And it is really crazy to think that we are actually standing where the first European settlement began over 450 years ago. Even though Menendez moved out of the settlement, Franciscan friars moved in. In 1587, they established the first mission in the continental United States, and that mission has been recreated here. The exact site was discovered by using the positions of the Native American Christian burials that were unearthed starting in the 1930s, and they located the altar because the burials had their feet towards the altar. And those remains, they were on display for quite some time before being reinterred in the 1980s. And sometime around 1655, this church was moved south to its current location, which is another tourist destination here in St. Augustine. Admission to this park is $20 for adults and $10 for children. So, do I think this is a tourist trap? Was it worth the money? Oh yeah, it was definitely worth the money. I mean, I felt that the Fountain of Youth was kind of touristy, but it was also kind of fun. And this place turned out to be an incredibly important historical site, and it was worth every penny in my book. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to hit the like button, and I will see you guys next week. Bye now.